Poverty remains one of the most pressing global challenges, but in 2025, some nations will face conditions so severe that survival becomes a daily battle. From regions ravaged by war to countries grappling with climate disasters, millions of people are living without basic necessities like clean water, food, and shelter. Imagine a world where families survive on less than 1.9 a day, where children are forced out of school to work, and where conflicts and environmental crises leave entire populations trapped in a cycle of poverty. These are the harsh realities faced by the nations on this list. Stay with us as we uncover the 12 nations facing extreme poverty in 2025 and the complex challenges that keep these countries on the brink. Understanding their struggles is the first step toward creating change. 12. Haiti. Haiti is a nation grappling with severe poverty, where 60% of its population lives below the poverty line. Decades of political instability have created an environment where progress is almost impossible. Widespread gang violence adds another layer of hardship, as families live in fear while basic infrastructure and services remain in disrepair. The lack of stable leadership has also deterred foreign investment, further stalling the nation's recovery. For most Haitians, survival depends on informal labor, remittances from relatives abroad, or small-scale farming. Education and healthcare are often inaccessible, leaving the younger generation with limited opportunities to break the cycle of poverty. Natural disasters, such as earthquakes and hurricanes, frequently strike the country, compounding the economic and social challenges already present. Haiti's story is one of resilience against the odds, but without significant political reforms and international cooperation, the nation remains trapped in a cycle of poverty and instability. A brighter future requires addressing both systemic issues and immediate humanitarian needs. 11. Madagascar. In Madagascar, poverty runs deep, with 75% of the population living on less than 1.9 a day. The island nation has been hit by a series of severe droughts that have devastated its agricultural industry that provides a livelihood for the majority of its citizens. These environmental disasters have led to widespread food insecurity, malnutrition, and economic stagnation. Madagascar's unique biodiversity, which could be a source of ecotourism revenue, is under threat due to deforestation and overuse of natural resources. The government struggles to balance immediate needs with long-term sustainability, leaving rural communities especially vulnerable. Education and healthcare systems remain underfunded, limiting access to essential services for much of the population. International aid has provided some relief, but the scale of the crisis requires more comprehensive solutions. Investments in climate-resilient agriculture, education, and infrastructure are critical to helping Madagascar overcome its ongoing poverty crisis. 10. Central African Republic (CAR). The Central African Republic is among the poorest nations globally, with 71% of its population lacking access to basic sanitation. Years of internal conflict have left the country without stable governance, resulting in crumbling infrastructure and limited access to vital services like clean water and healthcare. Many communities remain isolated, with roads and transportation networks severely underdeveloped. The majority of families rely on subsistence farming, but ongoing violence often forces them to flee their homes, abandoning crops and livelihoods. Humanitarian aid is often delayed or obstructed due to the unstable political situation, leaving millions without consistent support. Education is another critical area where CAR lags, further perpetuating the cycle of poverty. To move forward, CAR needs both immediate humanitarian assistance and long-term peace-building efforts. Only with a stable foundation can the country begin to rebuild its economy and provide opportunities for its people. 9. Malawi. Malawi is one of the poorest countries in Africa, with 85% of its population relying on subsistence agriculture for survival. Frequent natural disasters, including cyclones and floods, have repeatedly destroyed crops, leaving millions vulnerable to hunger and economic instability. Climate change has only made these events more frequent and severe, threatening the livelihoods of the rural population. Despite these challenges, the people of Malawi show remarkable resilience. Communities often come together to rebuild after disasters, but these grassroots efforts are no match for the scale of the problems they face. The lack of access to modern farming techniques and infrastructure further hampers progress, keeping many families trapped in poverty. Addressing Malawi's crisis requires a multifaceted approach. Investments in agricultural technology, disaster preparedness, and rural education can help build a foundation for long-term sustainability. Global efforts to combat climate change are also crucial to ensuring Malawi's future. 8. Niger. Niger faces immense challenges as one of the world's least developed nations. With only 19% of adults able to read and write, the lack of education is a significant barrier to progress. Many children are unable to attend school due to economic pressures, instead working to support their families in subsistence farming sector, increasingly threatened by desertification as the Sahara expands. Rapid population growth exacerbates the problem, stretching Niger's already scarce resources to their limits. Basic services such as healthcare, clean water, and sanitation are out of reach for much of the population. Food insecurity is another critical issue, with frequent droughts reducing agricultural yields and leaving millions at risk of starvation. To address its poverty crisis, Niger needs targeted investments in education, family planning, and sustainable agriculture. These measures, combined with international support, could help the nation escape its current trajectory and build a more stable future for its people. 7. Mozambique. Mozambique struggles with widespread poverty, where nearly half of its children suffer from chronic malnutrition. The country is frequently hit by tropical cyclones, which destroy vital infrastructure and agricultural lands. These recurring disasters leave millions of families in a constant state of rebuilding, further hindering economic progress. For most Mozambicans, agriculture is the primary source of income, but climate change has made farming increasingly unpredictable. Schools and healthcare facilities are often underfunded, leaving children without quality education and families without basic medical care. The lack of infrastructure, from roads to clean water systems, compounds the challenges. Addressing Mozambique's poverty requires substantial investments in climate resilience, agricultural innovation, and public infrastructure. International aid and local reform must work hand in hand to create a more sustainable future for the country's vulnerable population. 6. Burundi. Burundi remains one of the poorest nations globally, with 65% of its population living in extreme poverty. Political instability and a history of conflict have left the country's economy stagnant, while its high population density places immense pressure on limited resources. Most families rely on subsistence farming, but the lack of arable land and modern farming tools keeps productivity low. Healthcare and education systems in Burundi are severely underfunded, leaving much of the population without access to essential services. Children often drop out of school to help their families, perpetuating the cycle of poverty for future generations. The situation is further worsened by frequent droughts and unpredictable weather patterns caused by climate change. To improve living conditions in Burundi, a multifaceted approach is essential. Investments in education, rural development, and governance reforms could provide the stability needed for the nation to move forward. 5. Democratic Republic of Congo (DRC). The Democratic Republic of Congo faces one of the highest levels of poverty in the world, with over 77% of its population living on less than 1.9 a day. Decades of armed conflict have devastated the country's economy, displacing millions and leaving basic infrastructure in ruins. These ongoing challenges make it nearly impossible for communities to access healthcare, education, or stable employment. Natural resources, which should be a source of wealth, are often exploited by foreign companies or militia groups, leaving little benefit for the local population. Families in rural areas depend on subsistence farming, but land disputes and insecurity frequently disrupt their livelihoods. To address its deep-rooted issues, the DRC needs both international support and significant internal reforms to promote peace, transparency, and sustainable development. Only then can the country unlock its true potential. 4. Yemen. Yemen's humanitarian crisis is one of the worst in the world, with 80% of its population needing aid to survive. Years of civil war have destroyed vital infrastructure, leaving families without access to clean water, healthcare, or education. Food insecurity is rampant, with 90% of the population facing hunger and malnutrition. The prolonged conflict has also limited economic opportunities, as industries have shut down and trade routes remain blocked. Women and children are among the most vulnerable, with many unable to access even the most basic resources for survival. International aid efforts are often disrupted by violence, leaving millions without relief. Yemen's recovery depends on an end to the conflict and a coordinated global response to rebuild the nation's shattered infrastructure and economy. The road to recovery will be long, but the resilience of its people remains a beacon of hope. 3. Afghanistan. Afghanistan is facing a dire economic and humanitarian crisis, with 90% of its population experiencing food insecurity. Decades of war have left the country in ruins, and recent restrictions on women's rights have further limited the nation's economic potential by excluding half the population from meaningful participation. The collapse of international aid following recent political changes has exacerbated poverty, leaving families without access to basic services. Schools, particularly for girls, have been shut down in many areas, denying children their right to education and a better future. The healthcare system is also on the brink of collapse, unable to meet the growing needs of its population. Rebuilding Afghanistan requires significant international cooperation and a focus on restoring rights and opportunities for all citizens. Without these efforts, the nation risks falling deeper into crisis. 2. South Sudan. South Sudan continues to face extreme poverty, with 82% of its population living in dire conditions. Ethnic conflicts and political instability have devastated the nation's infrastructure, leaving millions without access to clean water, healthcare, or education. Food insecurity is a critical issue, as severe droughts and flooding disrupt agricultural production, the main source of livelihood for many. The country's young population, many of whom have known nothing but conflict, faces limited opportunities for growth. Schools are often closed or underfunded, and healthcare facilities struggle to operate without adequate resources. Displacement is another significant challenge, with millions forced to flee their homes due to violence or natural disasters. Addressing poverty in South Sudan requires a multi-layered approach, including conflict resolution, investment in education, and international aid to rebuild essential infrastructure. Without these steps, the cycle of poverty and instability will persist. 1. Somalia. Somalia is one of the most poverty-stricken nations in the world, with 96% of its population living in multi-dimensional poverty. Years of civil war, terrorism, and the absence of a centralized government have left the country in chaos. Severe droughts caused by climate change have further worsened the situation, leading to widespread famine and displacement. The lack of basic infrastructure means many Somalis have no access to clean water, healthcare, or education. Women and children are disproportionately affected, often bearing the brunt of poverty and violence. Efforts to deliver humanitarian aid are frequently disrupted by conflict, leaving millions without relief. Somalia's path to recovery hinges on international intervention and the establishment of a stable government. Climate resilience projects and targeted development programs could help alleviate poverty and provide a foundation for long-term stability. Hearing about the struggles these nations face is a sobering reminder of how interconnected our world is. From conflicts to climate crises, the challenges they endure impact not only their citizens, but also the global community. While the future may seem bleak, international cooperation, humanitarian aid, and grassroots efforts can make a difference. Want to learn more about the world and how different places face unique challenges and opportunities? Click on the video appearing on your screen now. You'll discover insights that might just change how you see the world. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories, insights, and opportunities that keep you informed and inspired. Together, we can make a difference.